I'm ready. You ready? You can already see my shits. It's right here. Bow. What you got? Huh? What you got? Tell me, comment below. Tell me what snacks you got. If you don't got a snack, please tell me you at least got a cuddle buddy. If you don't got that, I'm sorry. My condolences. And I still have my mohawk. It's just twisted. That's all. That's all. I look a little bit weird without the actual mohawk, but you know, I just wanted to switch it up on you. Adam. Thank you. SupTho. Oh. The following story. I'm not gonna finish that. Just saying, like, realistically, I was not gonna read that on.
This is possibly one of the weirdest things to ever happen to me.
Okay.
And the throwaway seems like a good idea when telling it.
Alright.
I had just moved to London, and being a bit lonely and wanting to get into the dating scene, I tried the whole OkCupid thing. It was alright. I honestly wasn't too active on it. I checked my account a few times a week, and messaged some profiles of girls that I thought were pretty. 95% of the time, my messages would go unanswered.
Damn.
I guess it was mostly because many of my messages, in retrospect, were pretty uncreative and dry. One day, I was messing around looking through various profiles when I saw an extremely attractive girl and decided I had to message her.
Okay.
In my opinion, she was a perfect 10. Not just the fact that she was a gorgeous blonde, but we liked a lot of the same music and movies.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I could actually send her a decent email because all the things we had in common. I also need to reiterate that her pictures were pretty smoking,
Okay.
which most definitely clouded my judgment. I should also mention that I'm former military and an Afghan veteran, so nothing really scares me too much.
Mm. Okay.
Almost immediately after pressing send, she responded. We messaged each other through OkCupid messenger service for about a week, and I got to learn a lot about her. Her name was Aoife, and she was from Belfast.
Okay.
She told me she had a daughter named Rosen,
Nope.
which didn't really bother me, and had a very long, complicated story about how she grew up a Catholic in Northern Ireland
Okay.
during the Troubles, and was orphaned at a young age. She seemed really driven, and had such an amazing story. I had so many questions, and in all reality, a lot of respect for her, so it was really easy to keep the conversation going.
Okay, but you just said that you have a lot of questions. Did those questions get answered? Did those questions get answered, though? Adam, did the questions get answered? Samantha, did the questions get answered? Anybody, did the questions get answered? Did the questions get answered? Did the questions get answered? Because if the questions didn't get answered, you fucking up. You fucking up by even doing this shit. I don't trust this. I do not trust online dating whatsoever. I don't care what it is. No, nothing. I don't trust no form of online dating whatsoever. Nope. In person, meeting you for the first time, yes. No, online, nope. If you do it, okay. No, you.
Within about another week, we started talking on the phone,
Right.
and then sometimes on Skype.
Okay.
She'd never do an actual video chat, which at the time I didn't think was too weird.
2 weeks?
But she'd send me pictures of her and her daughter, friends, and the like. For the most part, this whole thing seemed legit. The stories she had were really detailed, and she was talking about stuff that I didn't really know a lot about, and honestly couldn't comprehend. Then there were parts of the story that seemed to get kind of weird, and didn't quite add up. At first, she told me she was a hairstylist at some swank place in central London.
Right.
I don't really frequent Central a lot, so okay, no biggie. I just met her online, and I wasn't going to head into Central to stalk her at work. Then she said she owned a bar in Camden called the Lock Tavern, which I looked up on the internet and is a real place,
Right.
and managed it on the weekends. She had detailed stories about all the bouncers and regulars. This didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but okay. I mean, I guess you could do both jobs and be a full-time mom.
That's hard as
It
hell.
seemed odd, but she seemed driven, and she also seemed really hot, so who was I to judge? Again, I wasn't going to be super creeper and pop down there. I just took her word for it. She also said she lived in a really nice penthouse near Covent Garden, which, if anyone knows the London real estate market, didn't seem plausible on a hairdresser or barmaid's wages. She explained this away by saying she'd fallen into some money after the troubles. It seemed kind of far-fetched, but again, without actually meeting her, who am I to judge? I started to notice some other weird things. She'd send me pictures, and in some of them, certain tattoos were present. In others, they weren't. I figured she was just sending old pictures, but I remember that's what started to tip me off that things were fishy, to say the least. Again, there's nothing wrong with sending old pictures, and I had no real reason not to believe the photos were of Aoife. They all seemed like the same girl, with the exception of the tattoos and some small changes in hair color. Nothing really seemed out of the ordinary. She would also send me pictures of her daughter, Roisin, who she claimed was 14. Finally, after talking to Aoife for a few weeks online, I asked her out on a date. I figured it was time I finally meet her. We're set to meet up on a Friday night, and on that Friday she doesn't respond to a single text or call.
Wow.
I had nowhere to meet her.
Wow.
By around 9 p.m., she texted saying things got out of control at her pub, and she was really sorry but she had to cancel. I was upset and should have bailed there, but I forgave her. We agreed to set up another first meeting. Things from here really started to get weird. As I said, I was doing the online dating thing, and in this time I'd met a few other girls. Another girl named Jo asked me out, who turned out to be a psychopath, but
Jo?
that's just because she had an uncontrollable temper. I went out with Jo one night in an area of London, which wasn't too far from where Aoife's pub was. While I was out, Aoife called and texted me a few times. I basically ignored the calls. When the date was over, I said bye to Jo, and went home and called Aoife. She asked where I was, and basically, well, I lied. I said I was out with a friend. Aoife didn't say anything, and we talked on the phone for a bit and then said goodnight. The situation got strange a few nights later when Aoife caught me in my lie. She claimed she knew that I was out with another girl. She knew which restaurant I was at, and the exact night I'd been there.
So now she wants some stalking
She even
shit.
knew what Jo looked like.
Wow.
Aoife claimed that one of the bouncers from her pub knew what I looked like because she had shown him photos of me, and that he recognized me when I came through the doors at the restaurant. This didn't make a lot of sense because I didn't see any bouncers at the restaurant we were at. She had details, though. They were spot on. This was odd, to say the least. I basically told Aoife that the date was set up before I'd even met her, and that we weren't really dating, so she had no right to be upset. Plus, she stood me up, so if anyone should be mad, it was me. To be honest, I forget what really happened in this part of the story. I think we fought for a bit. Didn't talk for a few weeks. Then one night she called me really late. It seemed kind of off, so I answered. She was panicking, and from what I could tell, she was suffering from sleep paralysis. I know it's scary, so I stayed on the phone with her until she went back to sleep. This happened a few more times, but I really had no intention to date or even see her. I went home to the US for about a month, and while we did keep limited contact, there was nothing too serious, and my expectations were pretty low. After I had arrived back in London, she invited me out. I don't remember much of the details, but she ended up canceling on me again. I basically decided, fuck it. I wasn't even upset. We'd text a little bit, but the communications really started to die down. I didn't think about it at all, and went on with my life. Then one night, I entered the Twilight Zone. One day I was in the King's Cross area with a friend of mine from the States. He had to make a meeting nearby, so I was by myself in the area. That's when I got a text from Aoife. She asked if I wanted to meet up, and I figured, why the hell not? I might as well finally meet this girl.
Fuck her.
I was in the same area of town, 2 stops away, and I didn't see any harm in it. She told me to meet her up in Camden, and we'd be at Weatherspoon's pub at noon.
Please make sure you got on your Adidas. Old, new. I prefer new, but if you have any Adidas will do, because you meeting a girl you never met before in person. I don't care if that shit. I don't care if you meeting her during the day, where it's broad daylight, or it's at night. I don't care if you meeting her, in a private area, or it's public. You know. I don't care if you meeting her at her house, which you shouldn't meet her at her house, or she's coming over there, or to your house. Make sure you got your Adidas on when you meet her, because right now I'm saying fuck her. But let's see how this plays out.
It wasn't a date, at least in the romantic sense, which was good. And at this point, I was really just curious to know who she was. I'd literally spent hours talking and texting this girl. I don't know Camden that well, and I'm getting texts from her on the way there as I'm trying to find the Weatherspoons. She's telling me she's at work and in the process of selling her share in the bar, but she's on her way. Another friend of hers is at the bar, but he's a great guy and you'll like him.
Hey.
Again, I was already there, so I might as well meet her friend. And that's when I met Reese. Reese was a tall, skinny ginger kid.
Reese is gone?
He was about 21 and had a thick Irish accent. I walked up to him, shook his hand, and we got drinks.
I'm sorry.
He seemed nice enough, and for as weird as the situation could potentially be, it wasn't all that uncomfortable. Another one of his friends was there as well. And they seemed like two nerds in their early 20s. They talked about football and video games and all the other stuff 20-something kids talk about, mixed in with a little bit of politics and a couple of random questions about Aoife. I'd been in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban a few years prior, so the situation wasn't anything to be concerned about. And then I got a text from her. Something along the lines of, "Hey, getting tied up, so I'll be there in about an hour."
Wow. There's always something.
He seemed nice enough, so we hung out and got a few beers, and moved on to the next pub. Still no Aoife. Reese and his friend were nice. We did rounds, and fortunately I hold my beer pretty well. Another apologetic text from her rolls in. Fuck it, we're drinking, I thought, and we were having a pretty good time. Reese would ask me random questions about Aoife, but I basically shrugged it off to being one of the only few things we had in common. We bar hopped around Camden, and went to the Holly Arms. At one point, I was in the queue to buy a round of drinks, and felt like this guy was way too close to me. I turned around and saw an overweight old man with an ugly brown jacket and a pockmarked face.
Oh no.
He had a crucifix tattooed on his neck.
What the fuck?
In all honesty, a typical barfly you'd see in any British pub. I said excuse me and walked past him. We continued to drink and bullshit the day away. By this time it was 2:30 or 3, and Aoife is nearly 3 hours late.
Fuck, man.
I decided to say fuck it and go to her place. Reese and his friends seemed cool with it.
Don't do that shit.
We get there and there's 2 Irish tricolors flying above the place. "Yeah, you can tell Aoife owns the place, huh?" Reese said. That part of the story kinda added up. We went into her place and I texted her we're there. "Oh great, I'm almost done with this. I'll be down in just a minute." She never comes down, but this is when the story starts to get really weird. This other dude named Pete shows up and shakes Reese's hand, and Reese says, "Oh, you're here to meet Eva." Keep in mind that Aoife and Eva are almost phonetically identical names.
Yeah.
I look at Reese and he's like, "Oh, this must seem weird." Eva is Aoife's best friend. Now, this seemed really weird, but I needed to figure out what was going on.
Bruh, how many times are you gonna keep saying this is weird? Like, this is weird. Like, I've legit lost count of how many times you said this is weird, or it got really weird, or this is like, what the fuck weird. Like, for me, no matter like what this scenario is, the amount of weirds I could take. I don't know, man. It's like I don't know, like 2 or 3, depending on the situation, because I'm a weird dude myself. But like, come on, bruh. You had to at least said this is weird at like, I want to say either close to 10 times or more than 10 times. You bullshitting, bruh. You don't get your shit fucked up. You keep doing this. This is weird. But maybe I should look into it. Oh wow, that's a finger. That's a dead finger right there. Just broke off. That's weird. Oh, what's that? That's an eyeball. Oh, that's weird too. Oh wow. Okay, them dead corpses right there. That's really weird. Oh, the Grim Reaper. Cool. Like, that's weird. Like, how many times are you gonna keep saying that's weird, bruh? Come on, bro. You just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, no. Just stop. Just stop. Just stop. Bruh. You couldn't be my friend. Nope. Just saying.
These 2 girls have almost exactly the same name, and I had never heard of Aoife mentioning Eva before.
Of course.
I start talking to Pete, and Reese starts asking similar questions to him about Eva that he was asking me about Aoife. But some of these questions were getting more serious. He was asking things like, "Do you love her?"
What? No.
Pete's story starts to sound eerily similar to mine. Pete meets Eva online. She's from Northern Ireland, has a daughter named Rosen. In this version, she's 12. He had tried to meet up with her a few times, but it fell through, and he was invited last minute to hang out today. Oh shit. This is weird. That was all I could think. Something wasn't right.
No shit.
At this point, I knew that someone was getting played. Probably me. And I was in some kind of game. But I needed to figure out what exactly was going on. Pete and I started to figure things out right about the same time, and right in front of Reese, who stuck to his guns on the story remarkably well. They both have similar names. They both have daughters and they're around the same age with a really common Irish name. I'm not buying it. Neither is Pete. We decide that the pub we're in might not exactly be friendly territory, and I don't want to get shanghaied in Camden, so I suggest we leave. Aoife sends me a text right at that moment saying she's almost on her way down. Great, just meet us up the street at some other pub. And Pete and I start walking out. On the way out, I ask the bartender, "Hey, is Aoife working today?" He responds,
No.
"No, mate. Aoife hasn't worked here in 3 years."
Wow.
At this point, I know something really creepy is going on. We head to the next pub. I've got a good buzz going on, but I know I need to sober the fuck up and fast. I think Pete might be a victim in this game too, but he also may not be. For sure, he can't be trusted. Reese and his buddy are suspect as well, but I don't have any proof yet.
3
My
years?
curiosity is keeping me here.
3 years?
We walk into another pub. Reese's friend says something to Reese, and I don't hear it. Neither does Pete. Reese loses it. He yells at his friend, and his friend basically says, "Fuck you, I'm out," and takes off. Pete and I are confused and still trying to put things together. I find a table on an outdoor deck. It's amazing how fast you can sober up when you think you're in trouble. I ask Pete if he has any pictures of Eva. Pete pulls out his phone. He shows me a picture that I've seen before. Wait, that's Aoife's daughter. No, mate, that's Eva, Pete replies.
No, it's not.
This is making no sense.
See?
I'd been sent the same picture of the same girl, and been told it was Eva's 14-year-old daughter.
But she
I
lied.
showed Pete the pictures that I had of Eva. He claimed he'd never seen the girl in the photos before. Reese was sticking to the story that I had pictures of Eva, and Pete had pictures of Eva, and then he wasn't sure why I thought the pic was of Rosen. He also kept claiming that Eva and Eva texted him to say that they were on their way. And that's when it dawned on me. I simply looked at Pete and asked him, "What number do you have in your phone for Eva?" Pete reads the number on his phone, and it turns out being the exact same number I had for Eva in mine. If all the other clues hadn't added up, this one sent it over the edge, and also sent Pete out of the bar as he literally jumped over a table and ran out the door in a panic. At this point, it's just me and Reese. I don't think he had overheard that we both had the same number for someone he was telling me were two separate girls. He kept saying that they had both texted him, and that they were on their way. I don't know who they are at this point, or if they even exist. I basically tell Reese that I think he's playing some kind of fucked up game, and then he's more than suspect. He took offense to this, and physically threatened me. He wasn't a big dude, and knew that if he stepped to me it wasn't going to end well, so I basically walked right through him, knocking him into a door frame, and tore out of the bar. I needed to jump on the northern line to get home. I wasn't waiting for anything. At this point I have no idea what the fuck is going on. At best, I'd been in some sort of Manti Teo type catfish scam, and at worst, I was about to be a victim in a snuff movie. I get on the tube, and there's a guy right behind me. I look at him. He's overweight, pockmarked face, brown jacket. We make eye contact. I look at his neck, and there's the same crucifix tattoo. It was the same guy. I'm a bit worried, but I've been under worse pressure before in my life. I calmly sat down on the train, but the train was being held in Camden for some reason, and wasn't moving.
Of course.
And that's when who jumps on the same carriage as the two of us? Reese. I could have sworn he made eye contact, and gave a nod to the man in the brown jacket. At this point I played dumb that they were there. On the London Tube there's a certain dinging noise that's made right before the doors close. I waited to hear that noise, then bolted out of the door. I ran around and doubled back on the tube several times. When I finally got back near home, I texted a friend in New Cross and told her I was scared I was being followed. She was having a party that night and invited me over. I really didn't want to head home alone. At this point, I think I doubled back and switched lines enough that if Reese and the man in the brown coat were following me, I'd definitely lost them. I made it to New Cross safe and sound. I had a few calls from Aoife the next few days, but I never answered them. She also sent a few texts saying we needed to talk.
No.
Eventually she stopped calling and texting altogether.
There you go, yup.
I have a few theories on the whole issue. One of my friends thinks that Reese and Aoife are the same person.
What?
I wouldn't rule it out, but the person I talked to on the phone definitely sounded like a woman. Anyway, I just thought I'd share. To those of you who are dating online and meeting sketchy people, be safe about it. Never let your curiosity get to you like it did me. If there's anyone out there who has any idea what's going on, feel free to share or play your theories off of me, because I'm still baffled by the whole thing.
If you're gonna meet somebody, make sure you got your Adidas on too. Cause, yeah. You don't want to be...
I was in this group on Facebook where people shared different kinds of stories, mostly funny ones. I usually post comments on there using my dummy account, and most of the people there were using dummy accounts as well. I had a fun conversation with this guy using a dummy account named Luffy, who claimed to be 21 years old. We exchanged messages on Facebook without actually adding each other. We both found out that we lived nearby each other, so we decided to meet up and have lunch in a mall near our school. I chose a place to meet where it was really crowded. Since I had dress rehearsal for a play, he told me that he would wait for me in a burger stand near our school. The night before, we sent each other pictures. I was excited to meet him, since he looked pretty fun to hang out with. By 4 p.m., I stood beside the burger stand. A heavily tinted red car stopped at the street in front of me. Then I received a text message from him asking me to go inside the red car. Since I've read a lot of stories here on Let's Not Meet, I decided to go with my gut instinct and send him a text saying that I wouldn't get in the car unless he got out and showed himself. What happened next made me promise myself that I would never meet anyone from the internet ever again. A man, most likely in his 30s, went out of the car and started to clutch me by my arm and kept tugging at me. I screamed like I've never screamed before, making it noticeable since there were civilians there as well. The guy who watched over the burger stand came to us and asked what was wrong, clearly concerned. "She's my daughter. She's in big trouble. She ran away from home," were this creep's defense. I denied it every time, and the burger guy told him that he would alert the guards from our school. That's when the Luffy let go of my arm, went inside his car muttering to himself, and drove away. When the guards came, I told them everything, and I was never let out of school that day without my guardian picking me up.
Oh, that's it? I would've ran. The fuck?
Last summer, just a month or two after I started reading things on this subreddit, I had a really creepy thing happen to me. Just some backstory. The day before I received the first text, I had been at a festival. Being the reckless 16-year-old I was, I got way too intoxicated and don't really remember much. I somehow made it home about 9 a.m. the following day.
Damn.
At around probably early afternoon, I wake up to a text from a random number asking, "Who is this?" Now at this point, I was terribly hungover and out of it, so I guess this text was from someone I embarrassingly gave my number to at the festival. I text back asking if I met them last night, and he says he doesn't remember. The conversation is pretty much normal for a small while, as I tried to work out who this person was. I eventually asked him if he could send a picture of himself, so I could try and remember talking to him the day before. He asked me if I received the picture, and I hadn't, so I just asked him for his name. We'll call him Jack, but this name didn't ring any bells to my hungover, still half-drunken self at the time, and I stupidly kept talking to him. I was asking all the people I went to the festival with if they remembered a guy named Jack, and nobody knew, so it was pretty weird. I was hanging too hard to think straight, though. This is when things started to sound a bit off to me. He asked how old I was and where I lived.
That's okay.
Which I answered and asked him the same.
Sometimes if the situation is too fucked up, or if the people are bullshitting to the max, sometimes you just gotta step away and just eat some popcorn and just watch it while you still have your Adidas on. So just in case anything pop off, you can run. He fucking up by texting this random ass dude and gave him name and address. Meanwhile, I'm right here eating popcorn. If I was in your situation, right, if I received a text saying, "Who is this?" I would have just blocked you. No. Yeah, I probably would have blocked you if you didn't say who you were. If all you said was, "Who is this?" That's it. Nothing else. I would have blocked you. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta watch from a fair enough distance where it's not too close, but it's not too far. You want to be close enough where you can see some shit pop off, but you want to be far enough to where if some shit pop off, you can run at the same damn time, right? That's all I'm saying, though.
He told me he was 17 and lived in the same place.
He lying.
So I took it as they were someone in the exact same situation as me.
He lying.
Unable to remember who they'd met last night. Now, what he said next might ring alarm bells for others, and it almost rang mine. But things like this are asked a lot by desperate boys around my area.
What?
He asked if I was single.
Wow.
From that point on, I really didn't care for speaking to whoever this was, so I ignored them and went back to sleep. I woke up again, slightly less hungover, and thinking more straight. I started reading through my text with Jack, and something clicked. I felt a bit uneasy, as I remembered a few months back one of my friends used a guy named Jack's phone from her work to call me, and the day after, he wouldn't quit texting me until he said he'd delete my number, and I had heard nothing since. I immediately texted her, asking if a guy named Jack still worked with her, and if this was his number. She replied saying yes, and I swear my blood ran cold. I even started to think I was dreaming or some shit, because this was the kind of thing I'd read on here, and you'd never expect this to happen to yourself. I sent her screenshots of my text with him, and she seemed really creeped out, telling me that he was a dirty man in his late 50s, and that he had been sending weird texts to another one of her colleagues. Far weirder than those I'd received, but I won't mention what they said out of respect for her privacy. And he was a bit of a creep to her in person, too. This shook me up a bit, so I told my mom, who was absolutely livid. She told me if he contacted me again, that she'd call the police. So fast forward to a few days later. I was in town waiting for my mom to pick me up to take me home to change for work, when I got a text come through from Jack. I was thinking, oh God, not again.
At least I have his number.
And opened it up to see a picture of some teenage guy with, "Did you get it yet? This is me," or something afterwards. I knew this wasn't him, so I ignored it and told my mom when I got in the car, and we called the police when I got home. They arranged to visit me when I got back from working, which was quite late since my shift finished around 10 p.m. They arrived, and my idiot phone had reset itself, causing me to lose all my texts and pictures, so I couldn't even show them the texts from before.
Wow.
But I could show the recent ones of him asking why I wasn't replying, and stuff along those lines. As the police were on my phone, he texted me, which I found quite funny, as he was unaware who they were being viewed by. We shared information about how he had harassed the girls I know who work with him, and as much as we knew about the guy, and they said they'd dig up some dirt on him and take a visit to his workplace. They said they couldn't do much about the text because it wasn't classed as harassment due to me ignoring him instead of telling him to stop. But what he'd done to the other girls was enough to make them take action. After they left, I texted him asking him not to text me again, and he replied with something along the lines of, "Why? What did I do?"
Bitch, are you serious?
But he never contacted me again after that. The police knocked on my door a few days later, telling me they were going to visit him later on today and would tell us what happened after. If I remember correctly, this whole thing is kind of a blur in some places, as I don't like to think about it much. They never got back to me, but luckily for me, I got all the gossip I needed from my friend who worked there. She had let everyone know about what he'd done, so pretty much everyone else working with him had been avoiding him, and I think he got quite angry about that. Apparently, the police came in and requested to talk to him in private, and they took him outside. When he came back in, she said he was very grumpy, obviously from the telling off. She soon found out that the picture he sent me was of his own fucking son,
Wow.
which is so completely messed up. His son found out what he'd done, and threatened to beat him up, rightly so.
Go.
Finally, the workplace fired him, and I had to do a statement for all their evidence so they could win if he took them to court. The last thing I heard of him was that he moved away from the area, which relieved me so much, as I like to take walks most days down by where he lived, which refrained me from doing so out of fear. There are some other things I should mention, which for me added to how creepy it was, but I wasn't sure where to put them. In between the time gap where he first texted me, after my friend used his phone, and when he texted me after the festival, I went down to the workplace to speak to the owners about getting a job there. At one point, I was sat smoking with pretty much all the staff outside, and I was sat opposite to him. This makes me feel so uneasy, because that whole time he must have known who I was. Maybe him seeing me then made him want to try and catfish me or whatever. My friend also told me that at the time he was trying to send a fake picture of his fucking son. He was walking around the workplace trying to find stronger Wi-Fi to send it, and getting really frustrated. One more thing. One that I just found out was that he had tried to contact me on WhatsApp. I was looking at his Facebook profile, and I recognized his profile picture from a message I got off some random guy on WhatsApp. But I shook it off as those random messages you get sometimes. Ew. I don't recall what date he sent me a message on there, and I don't have that app anymore. But I thought it was worth noting. I feel a little better after posting this on here, and I've been meaning to for some time now.
That whole situation was fucked up. Bullshit.
When I was 14, I lived in a small suburb in the Midwest, full of ordinary people who didn't quite share my interests in goth metal and David Lynch movies. I often took to the internet to meet people with like-minded interests, in hopes of some stimulating conversation. To add to that, I had recently come out as gay to a couple of close friends, along with my mother, who didn't take the news well at all. I didn't know any gay people in real life, so at the time the internet felt like the only place to meet other people sharing similar experiences. This was back in the days of dial-up, when it wasn't too uncommon for strangers to strike up an IM conversation based solely on their AOL profile. One day I received a message from a guy around my age named Steven. It started off pretty normal. We talked about our favorite music and movies, how much we hated school, and all the celebrities we thought were cute. He eventually revealed that he was 16, and living with his older brother because his parents had kicked him out of the house for being gay. I thought it was cool to meet someone who lived nearby that was old enough to drive, and didn't live with their parents, so we decided to meet up after a couple of weeks of super long chat sessions. I knew my parents wouldn't really be cool with me meeting a stranger from the internet, so I lied and told them he was a mutual friend of another friend they already knew and trusted. Once the plan was set, he showed up on a Friday evening in an old beat-up pickup truck. To my relief, he didn't look like a creepy old catfish stalker.
That's how they get you.
In fact, he looked just like his pictures. Red hair, goofy smile, but definitely not unattractive. We went for a ride, grabbed a bite to eat, stopped at a guitar store, and cut a new movie at the theater.
Wow.
I was so excited to have a friend with similar interests who knew about the pressures of being gay in a small town, and was happy to chauffeur me around. I decided I didn't want the fun to end once curfew drew closer,
Wow.
and asked if he wanted to crash at my place.
Wow.
I had a trundle bed that pulled out from underneath mine, so he could sleep comfortably without the pressure of something sexual happening. After watching a DVD, we both passed out for about an hour, when suddenly there's a loud knock at my door. My parents awoke to find a police officer, also a friend of the family, as my dad was a retired cop, standing at the door. I went out into the living room to see what was going on, and he proceeds to tell us they received an anonymous phone call that someone in our house had been communicating with a wanted pedophile. My parents went into my room where my computer was, and forced me to downgrade my AOL account to kids only, while my new friends slept soundly nearby. I told them I had no idea what they were talking about, but since I was pretty much the only person using the internet extensively in our family, they said I would be banned from regular use until the mystery was solved. The next day, Steven and I were out for a ride, just enjoying the day, when all of a sudden we passed an oncoming SUV who slammed on his brakes and did a squealing 180, only to begin tailgating us and honking his horn furiously. I was screaming at my friend to slow down and asking if he knew what the hell was going on. Who was this crazy person behind us? He didn't say a word. We wound up in a high-speed chase that felt like hours, but probably only lasted 5 minutes. Steven finally pulled over and jumped out of the car and motioned for me to follow, so I did. As we're getting out, the driver behind us headed straight for me and went to punch me square in the face, but stopped mere centimeters before actually hitting me. I pulled away from his shaking fist and saw a man in his 30s with eyes bulging out of his head, literally. I much later realized he had Graves' disease, which, if any of you have seen what that looks like, it's nothing short of terrifying on an angry man about to beat you up. This man went on to tell me that my friend was actually 21 years old, and that he was his boyfriend, and that I needed to stay out of their lives if I wanted to live to see tomorrow. After the initial shock and confusion wore off, I was absolutely broken. Scary Graves guy took off with Steven and left me in the dust. I made my way home and didn't say a word to my parents, just locked myself in my room and cried harder than I've ever cried before. I felt stupid and ashamed for being so naive. I hoped the whole thing would just blow over without anyone finding out. But the story didn't end there. My older sister and I had our own landline phone number, separate from the main house that we shared, and kept the answering machine in my room. I came home from school one day and noticed my mom was already home, which was odd because she usually didn't get home from work until a few hours later. I went straight to my room to find a new message on the machine. It was the Graves dude, who went to leave a voicemail, but my sister had picked up mid-message, so I could hear their conversation over the recording. He pretended to be a faculty member of my school and asked for my mom's work number. He wound up calling her and giving her a detailed account of just who exactly I'd been hanging around with. I went out to the back patio where my parents sat, looking just absolutely devastated. They informed me 2 FBI agents were on their way to get a report about my experience with Steven, who, by the way, wasn't actually even named that. It was a fake name he had given me. Once the agents arrived, they informed me that he was wanted for alleged molestation of 2 children, one of them as young as 10 years old.
Wow, that's disgusting.
Needless to say, I was sick beyond belief, and fucking angry to boot. I complied with everything they asked me to do, and agreed to testify against him on trial. I wasn't going to let this lying fucker get away with hurting any more kids, and apparently the other families involved were so embarrassed they didn't want to testify, leaving only me to do something about it. Around this time, I received a late-night phone call from Steven's boyfriend, asking if I was okay, checking up on how I was doing, and eventually turning the conversation around to a more flirtatious tone, and complimenting me on my musical tastes, appearance, and etc. At this point, I realized that this wasn't just a jealous, possessive boyfriend involved in a game of cat and mouse, but rather some kind of partner in crime, who reveled in younger boys just as much as his disgusting significant other. I quickly hung up and never spoke to him again, though he did attempt to call a few more times after that, according to the caller ID. Fast forward 1 year when Steven's court date finally arrived. I went to the courthouse downtown with my mom, and was informed by an attorney that he took a plea deal and would be sentenced to jail for a year.
A year? Really?
Yep. That's right, folks. He only got 1 year because his victims refused to come forward and testifying. Another year later, I was 16, and finally had my own car along with a great group of supported friends. I had pretty much buried this memory far away in the deep recesses of my mind, and never really thought much more about the encounter. Until one day I started to receive IMs from an unknown screen name.
Oh my god.
These IMs consisted of death threats and facts about me that only he could have known from driving by my house and stalking me. Like what kind of car I drove, and the type of clothes I like to wear, what my daily schedule primarily consisted of. This went on for a couple of weeks from various mystery handles, sharing in explicit detail how I was going to die. I was pretty freaked out and kept a close watch wherever I went. However, I never saw him creeping around in spite of the heightened awareness of my surroundings. Eventually, I printed the IMs out and shared them with my school principal along with the police, assuming no doubt it was Steven attempting to contact me again, hell-bent on revenge. After filing a report, I luckily never heard from him again. I don't know what became of him. I don't even remember what his real name was. I can only hope something truly horrible has happened to him since all of this transpired. This is a story I kept secret from friends for a long time, and to this day many people in my life don't know about it. It's still a delicate subject, but a story I felt compelled to share on what has now become my favorite subreddit. I guess it isn't as creepy as a lot of stories posted on here, just more of a what the fuck kind of thing. Anyway, I have since received counseling and live a very happy life as a 28-year-old, far, far away from that dreadful little town, and any stranger who attempts to contact me on Facebook gets blocked immediately.
There you go. There you go.
What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here,
I forgot
as
about that.
always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave feedback in the comments below, as well as perhaps like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a personal story that you'd like to submit,
The hell does
or
that
you'd
mean?
like to just send me a message, links to all of my social media will be in the description for the video below.
My vocabulary.
This includes my Gmail, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.
I hate
If
this
you
shit. I
do
hate
decide to
this
send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the theme of the story is, if it has any, the name of the story, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious at all about the music used in this video, the music is always listed in the description below, in the order which it appears. I also have links to the artists and list the tracks by name, just in case you want to find more of their work. Last but not least, if you have any criticism, please be sure to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks. I hope you do too. And when I said I hate that, I wasn't talking about the video. I was talking about my hair because I can't really wash it. Like if I wash it, the shit's gonna the twists are gonna come out. So I gotta pat the shit like I got weave or something. I'm still stuck on that. I don't know if it was the second one, but or was it the first one where the guy was just in a situation with the two females, and he said he just kept saying it was weird over and over and over. Like how many times do you be like you're in a situation, right? And you say it's weird. Sorry. I hate. Oh my god. So, yeah, how many times you be in a situation and you say, "Oh, this shit is weird. This is really weird. It's a little bit weird. Wow, that shit's weird. Who the hell are you? Why are you acting weird? Like, how many times do you have to say that before you bounce and get out that situation? I told you, for me, it's like 2 or 3 times. I'm pushing 3. But, wow. I think he legit said, this is weird, at least over 10 times. If he didn't, I'm really mad at him. I'm really mad at that whole situation. Because it felt like everybody in that situation, right, everybody was bullshitting. On a side note, if I ever have a friend named Reese or whatever, you best believe I'm gonna call you Reese Cup. That may sound like a little, not masculine, but yeah, if you're a female and your name is Reese or Reese's or Reese, I don't know. I'm not gonna call another dude Reese Cup, but yeah, y'all know what I'm trying to say. Like, if I have a female friend that's named Reese or whatever, I'm gonna call you Reese Cup. I don't care how mad you get. You better catch on. You better get used to the shits. But yeah, like I said, man, it's at least 2, maybe 3 weirds that you get from me before I bounce and I haul ass from this situation, never to be talked about again. That's crazy. That's really fucking crazy. But, hey, as always, keep it cool, keep it classy. And I love you. Stay happy, my family.